Tavshin Lamed Gimel, as most of these Mamorim are from that year. The ones that are Dvar Malchus are mainly from Tavshin Lamed Gimel. So we say in Megillus Eicha, the pasuk begins with the words, not the Megillus Eicha begins. The Maimer begins with the words from Megillus Eicha, Perek Hey. It says, Zechor Adonai Hashem Mahayolanu, Zechor Havai Mahayolanu. Remember Havai, what occurred to us and what was to us, what happened to us. Habita Ure'ei es Charpaseinu. Look at and see our shame and our embarrassment. Hine b'pasuk zeh yesh legam ha'pirush l'mal-yusa. Even though it's in the simple reading of the pasuk, it's talking about something negative, about the Yidden's embarrassment and shame and so on, and look at what we're going through. There is also a positive aspect and component of this. Like we find Ma'amarim of Tzemach Tzedek, that he explains many psukim in Megillus Eicha, the way they are in a positive, and in a wondrous way, in an unbelievable way. This fits in general with the concept that we say that Chassidus, Pnimis HaTorah, sees the good in everything. For example, like in the Teichacha, when the Alter Rebbe read the Teichacha, it was all barachas, even though it externally seems clawless, because the way you read it in Chassidus, the way Chassidus understands it, it's a positive thing, etc. Like my father-in-law brings down, also in a similar mimer, a mimer with a similar title in Sefer Amorim Yiddish. So he says, why did the Frierdiker Rebbe write these Mamorim, of the selected Mamorim in Yiddish? So it should reach every single Yid in the ends of the earth, even though the Mamorim were said in Yiddish, but when he wrote them down, or when it was otherwise transcribed by others, it was written down in Lashon Kodesh. But in this case, these Mamorim were written in Yiddish, so it should be able to reach every single Yid in the ends of the earth. It was originally published in a publication that the Frierdiker Rebbe was involved in, called Hakriya V'Akdusha. Hein b'makim gashmi v'hein b'darga chul. It should also be able to reach every single Yid all over, both in the physical place and also in level, meaning even those that are not capable of studying a Maimer in Lashon Kodesh, still in all, they'll be able to read this Maimer that's written in Yiddish. So the Frierdiker Rebbe brings down in the Maimer by saying the Maschal Torah of Baal Shem Tov, the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov, that again the Rebbe emphasizes it was available to all. He said it in a community, in a village of simple people. They had self-sacrifice to redeem captives out of the love of another Yid. So the Frierdiker Rebbe brings down what the Baal Shem Tov says on this pasuk in a positive sense. Zechor Hashem Mahayolanu. Remember Hashem, meh, from the word ma, that was to us. Gedenkt Gott. This is what he says in Yiddish. Remember God. Was is geworden durch Zeyer ma sheben neshama. What occurred through the ma of the neshama, meaning, again, it's a positive thing. That look what the ma of the neshama of a Yid accomplished and reached. Habita of a goymer. Look closely, that's what Habita means. Examine, look closely at the fact that they are totally giving up their lives for love of another Yid. So in other words, Cherpaseinu, he's making a play on words. One way of using the word Cherpaseinu is from the word embarrassment and shame, but a positive word means to totally throw away one's life on behalf of something greater and so on. So the Rebbe is going to contrast these two contrasting meanings in the pasuk and in the word. How do they fit together? So he says in line 16, we need to understand how do we reconcile and how do we join the explanation of the word in a positive sense. That in the word that they throw away, they're totally giving up their lives. That's the idea of self-sacrifice. How do we connect it to the simple explanation? That's the idea of the opposite of praise. How could it be both things together? On the one hand, talking about self-sacrifice, and on the other hand, talking about embarrassment. As the Rebbe always says, if there's two meanings in the same word, they must have a connection between them. Ois Beis, line 19. Yuvim Bahagim, this will be understood by prefacing Mashmetzina, B'drush Rabbeinu, Nisienu B'chol HaDoides, L'bir, Pasazek Kipshute, B'oifen Shalei B'chashvach. What we find in the Mamorim of Rabbeim, Nisiim, in all the generations, concerning the explanation of this pasuk in the simple sense. In the simple sense, we're talking here about something that's the opposite of praiseworthiness. We're talking about the Eden's embarrassment. Hine become mamorim, we see in many mamorim. Hochel midrusha tzamach tzedek, beginning from the mamorim at tzamach tzedek, shedarki levayir kol inyan al pipshat remes drush v'soid. The way of the tzamach tzedek in his mamorim was to actually go through many different levels of explaining something. Most Mamorim will bring in the pasuk, have some questions in the pasuk, and go straight according to the Pnimius HaTorah, according to Chassidus. That Tzemach Tzedek actually will bring in the Pshat, and will bring in different Mefarshim on the pasuk, and according to the level of Remez, and Drush, and then Kabbalah, and then will make the whole picture fit together. We see similar to this already in Derech Tesecha, where the Tzemach Tzedek does this. He'll bring in the Kabbalah, he'll bring in the simple Pshat, and so on. But in the Mamorim and Torah, we see this more. We'll spend like quite a bit at the beginning of the Maimer going through the different explanations of the different Mefarshim. Especially, we find this in the Mamorim of Tafresh Lamed, of the year Tafresh Lamed of 1870 of the Rebbe Marash, that he speaks about this pasuk. Go to the top, page Vav, and the Rebbe says, by way of in passing, Sheyesh Lechavivus Miyuchedes, this has special favor, the Sefer Mamorim of Tafresh Lamed, Kivon Shenit was La'achroina, since it was recently printed. In other words, in Tafshin Lamed Gimel, this was recently printed in 1973. Surely everything is by divine providence. So if it was just recently printed, it definitely has to do with something that has to be derived from and taught and learned at this time, when the Rebbe was saying the Maimer. So in all the different Mamorim, including Tzemach Tzedek and the Rebbe Marash, so it says, Huva Maimer HaZoyer B'Negel B'Koshes Knes Yisrael Zechor Hashem Mahayolonu. It's brought down the statement of the Zohar concerning the request that the Bnei Yisrael are saying to Hashem, and we're telling Hashem, remember Hashem Mahayolonu. So he says like this, that it's not just Yidden request from Hashem to remember, but we find complementary to that, or corresponding to that, that Hashem asks from the Yidden in a way of remembrance. Like it says, Ami, my nation, my nation, remember please what Balak, the king of Moav, plotted against you, and what response Bilam ben Ba'or had, that instead of negative things and bad things, instead he said good, and he turned it over to blessings, etc., which is part of Haftorah of Parshas Balak from Sefer Micha. And then he goes on and says another example of where we find that Hashem asks of us to remember Again, corresponding to our asking Hashem to remember. So too it also says, remember your Creator in the days of your youth. In addition to the simple meaning of that pasuk, that a person has to do tshuva while he's still young, that that's when a person's life force and energy and vitality is his strongest. So it's the most auspicious time for him to do tshuva and to connect with Hashem and so on. In addition to the simple meaning of that pasuk, there's also the explanation that the Medrash says in this pasuk, the days of Bechurei Secha is a play off the word Beis HaBchira, the house of your choosing. V'hainu sheyizker es Beis HaBchira b'shah she'amad al tiloi. That Hashem is saying, Zechor as Beirecha b'mei Bechurei Secha, remember Hashem, how it was in the times of the Beis HaMikdash. We're asking the person to remember the Beis HaMikdash and how it was. It's fully standing, complete in its way that it's supposed to be. So this is another case of where Hashem addresses the Yidden and asks us to remember. Maybe at Tzemach Tzedek, Mashu Kosav Ala Mazmin Ageli Nazchira, like Tzemach Tzedek brings down what the Mekubal, the Ramazar Moshe Zakuta writes concerning remembrance. Sheyadua, that it's known Shaydei Shezoichim Chaz De'avai Oflav, through remembering the kindnesses of Hashem and His wonders, Asher Paul B'mei that He effected in the early days. By remembering these things, so the remembrance itself returns and awakens that higher power that did those miracles. It sounds very similar to what the Baal Shem Tov says about Hayom Ha'elim Niskarim V'Nasim, that through remembering the events that happen on a certain date in the Jewish calendar, the same thing repeats itself. So the Ramaz says specifically concerning remembering Hashem's kindnesses and wonders and miracles, so that very same power that affected and made those miracles come down again. Like the mitzvah of remembering going out in Mitzrayim. This is something that Hashem commanded us to remember. It's a mitzvah to remember going out in Mitzrayim. And so through remembering that, so just like initially, when Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim, He subjugated the clip of Mitzrayim through that as well. When we remember now, after many years, we remember what took place then in Mitzrayim. So we say in through this, we sublimate and subjugate the clip of Pari. That's where it says, my nation, remember please what Balak plotted against you, and what Bilam responded. What is the purpose of that remembrance? So he explains line 23, the purpose of this remembrance is to awaken and inspire and draw down again that power of above that assisted you in the days of Balak and Bilam. So that's the reason why Hashem tells us to remember what took place then. And a similar vein in the Gale is the Koran, like this Beis HaBechira, so too concerning the remembrance about the Beis HaMikdash. Remember the days of your Bechurei Secha, that we say Bechurei Secha is the word Beis HaBechira, the chosen house. By remembering the times of the Beis HaMikdash, and remembrance brings down the same power that was at the initial event, so we are negating and countering the destruction and the gulfs. That's what the Zohar concludes. If the Yidden would have been fulfilling that request from above, to remember what Hashem did with Balak and Bilam, and to remember the days of the Beis Hamikdash. So if we would fulfill Hashem's request of remembrance, then we would not have to come on to say to Hashem, remember what we're going through, because we would not be going through any trouble, we would not be going through any problems and issues.
Progress.
Line 31, bottom of the second page of the Maimon. In addition to what we just now learned, that we quoted from the Maimon of the Frierdiker Rebbe and the Tzemach Tzedek, in the Sefer Amorim Yiddish. In the Sefer Amorim Yiddish of the Frierdiker Rebbe, top of Zion, Hanisker Leil that was mentioned earlier, Hu V'gam Teres HaBaal Shem Tov, was also brought down the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov on this pasuk, Zechor Hashem Mahoyalon, She'amar b'mesiba shel b'nei Torah. You will soon see that the location and the situation is relevant to the point. That the Baal Shem Tov said this by a gathering of people that studied Torah, she's go b'chidushem sh'v'Torah, that were a little bit overly proud and arrogant about their novel interpretations of Torah, and the Baal Shem Tov was trying to direct them to leave that behind. That in that gathering, the Baal Shem Tov explained in an opposite way from the positive interpretation we said before. In the positive interpretation, when he spoke to the simple Jews, he told them, give a look about because of the Mav, the Neshama, that's why the Yidden are willing to be mechadef es nafsham, they're willing to throw their lives away for the sake of saving another Jew, for redeeming captives. The opposite of that was over here. Line 4, Zechor Hashem Mahoyalanu, meaning gedenk Gott was es geworfen von unser Masha beneshama. Remember Hashem what happened with the meh, of our neshama. Habita ure'ei es cherpaseinu. Look and see our shame. Guckt sich zu und mach uns sehendig unsere eigene Schande. Look and examine and make us open our eyes up. Ure'ei, I guess he's explaining that Hashem should show us that we should see our own shame of not having the appropriate bittul, as he will soon explain. So he says in line 8, the idea behind this is, like it's explained in the Bambadim, just like in holiness and sanctity, there's a level of ma, like it says, v'nachnu ma, that Moshe and Aaron said, and we are a level of ma. Should we not bit like to explain that the ma that the Moshe and Aaron said was indicative of their bittul. So there's the ma of kedusha, but since it says zelu mazeh osalakim, that everything has a corresponding level in klippa, in le'umazeh, and the opposite, there's also ma. We're talking here about the meh, the meh hayalanu, the negative ma. The hainu b'chinas ma shebel umazeh, that the ma of the opposite side. Shezel ma shekasav. This is what it says by Avraham Avinu. Ufilak shoy ushmar re'uma. He had a pelagish, a concubine. Her name was Re'uma. So Chassidus explains what is Re'uma, what's the inner meaning of the word Re'uma. Shezoi bechinas klippa d'Atzilus. That's a klippa of the world of Atzilus, even though in general, in Atzilus itself, there's no klippa, but this is a klippa that corresponds to and is the opposite of Atzilus. She klippa daka me'oid. It's a very refined type of klippa. We'll soon see what's refined about it and what's the klippa of it. Shurak bechinas re'uma. This klippa that is countering Atzilus is in a way that's only see my ma. Shu inyan hargoshas habitl. He senses his bitl. He wants to show himself He wants to show off his bittul. So he says, Re'u, see, ma, look at my bittul. On the one hand, if we're talking here about a Torah word, we're talking about that he really has bittul. Yet somewhere mixed into that bittul, he still wants his bittul to be seen by others. That's why it's a klippa daka. That's why it's a finer, more subtler type of klippa, and that's why it's a klippa of the highest world of the world of Atzilus. And it's not just bittul, but it could be in every aspect of Torah mitzvahs that the person wants others to see him. He says in line 17, V'gam ha-Torah v'ha-mitzvahs she'oiseh, and also the Torah mitzvahs that he does, that also Torah mitzvahs that he does, he's doing it so others should be aware of it. There's a famous Vart Benegeya that there was somebody, okay, I'll tell the story later about Cain Asa Hillel, that someone that was imitating a Bill Paritcher to look for a lulav and nesri. But be that as it may, so the Rebbe goes on to say, from this level, of the level of Re'uma, the Zechor Havayim Mehoyolanu, that we have abused and misused the Ma and used it for our own aggrandizement and our own ego. So from this we can come to even lower level, like the teaching in the Mizrach Magid, Shashon, Ishnaz Masayim, L'Sal Klusay. Tafshin Lamed Gimel was the 200th year of the Mizrach Magid's passing, who passed away in Taf Kuf Lamed Gimel, 1773. But Pirush Maimer Hazal, and the explanation what Chazal says, actually the end of 1772. Who is called a shoita, one that loses what's given to him. There's different halachas in the Gemara that we need to know who is considered a shoita, a fool, to know is any of his transactions considered valid. Sales, betrothals, divorces. So the Chazal give a litmus test to define what is a shoita, who is a shoita. Someone that loses whatever is given to him. If you give someone saying they're always losing it, they don't understand the value of things, then they're a shoita. So there's the inner meaning of what that means, that he's losing his ma. This inner part of the neshama. He explains, line 23, She'ikara Adam, who the primary part of a person is Atzel Mad Musadam Shabai, the form of the image of a person that's in him. Like it's brought down the Zoyar, when a wild animal Chas v'Sholem attacks a person, surely the reason why the wild animal attacks a human being is because the wild animal believes that the human being is an animal. Because otherwise it says in Chumash Bereshis that your fear will be on all the animals of the earth. How is it possible that a wild animal can attack a person if Hashem promised that the fear of a person will be upon all the animals of the earth? But because because the averos that a person did, he lost his human face, he lost his human image, and the animal just thinks there's another animal. Now the Rebbe says it's not like some spiritual something, but it's actually in the brackets. He says in line 27, to note, it's not like some type of spiritual type of cause and effect type of thing. That Hashem, let's say, punishes him. You didn't behave and you did Aveda, so therefore you're going to be attacked by wild animals. No. This is the nature that's built into animals and human beings. That because of a person's transgressions, a person's image of a human being left him, and he seems like an animal to the other animals. Therefore, a wild beast can overpower him. Now, what is this Demus Adam? The Adam, we know the word Adam is Begematria Ma, is the numerical equivalent of the Ma. So we know this is the idea. The Ma is also this tselem of the Demus Adam that will keep wild animals at bay. That's the meaning of what it says, that who is a shoita, someone that loses the Ma, top of page ches. He means to say that Tselem Adam, the human image, which is Gematria Ma, this Tselem Adam, this image of above, this that is transplanted in the person's visage down here, that's given to him from the supernal worlds. V'nikra Shoita is called a fool. Why is he called a fool? We're saying, what does it have to do with foolishness? If a person does Averis and loses his Ma, what does that have to do with foolishness? So he says, because the reason why he lost his Ma, the reason why he lost his Tselem Adam is because of foolishness. Because a person does not transgress an Avera unless a spirit of Shtus enters him. That like the Chazal say on the pasuk, a man when his wife strays, and the spelling of the word kisista is not like we know from a Sekta Soita with a samach, but it's actually spelled with a sin. A sin and shin is the same letter, except one is dagish, one is rafa. But so we learn from that there is the idea that a person does an aveda only through the Ruach Shtus. Now, why specifically of all Avedas do we speak about this Ruach Shtus? Do we learn out that an Aveda has to do with Ruach Shtus specifically by the wayward woman, and not by any other Aveda? Is there a hint towards this? Because just like the physical wayward woman down here below, that causes a rift and a separation between a husband and wife, the same thing, there becomes the spiritual rift through an Aveda between the spiritual husband and wife. Hashem is our husband and Yidden are Hashem's wife. So that's why we are taught this idea of Shtus, at Ein Adam Oivra Aveda and Nichts bei Ruach Shtus, by this concept, by the concept of the Soita. We could say this is a very exact expression. A person does not do an Aveda unless it enters him a spirit of Shtus. Why does it use a word that enters him? It's foreign to the person. This is something that entered the person. It's completely not who he is. That's the same thing like we were saying before, that a person naturally would be ruling over the animals. The only reason he doesn't rule over the animals is because he lost his Tselem Adam, he lost his Ma, therefore the animal thinks he's like another animal. So in other words, the natural state of a person is to have the Ma, to have the Tselem Adam, to not have the Ruach Shtus. Now there came into him some foreign thing, nichnas by Ruach Shtus. That's not the natural state of a person. That's not who the person himself is. The person himself is a Ma and a Tselem Adam begematria Ma. This is very interesting because in the same Amorim the Rebbe also emphasizes, where he talks about the Ruach Shtus, that the world's natural state is Hashem's garden. Basa legani achoisi kala. Something foreign happened, something unnatural happened, and removed this garden state of the world. But the natural state of the world is a garden of Hashem. Just like the natural state of a person is that there's a Tselem Adam over there, and there's a Shema over there, and only something foreign enters and prevents that.